You know, on this program, we talk about infighting politically. Usually it's the Republican Party, but Democrats in New York, they're airing their own fair share of dirty laundry as well. Now, take the governor here and the mayor, who just will not let up on their feud. Now, they're taking more jabs at each other. This time, it's over New York's homeless policy. Now, during de Blasio's mayoral campaign, he said he'd restore a rent subsidy program for homeless families that was phased out back in 2011. However, Monday, when the mayor's homeless commissioner reached out to officials in Albany on the issue, they said, "You snooze, you lose." Governor Cuomo said, "I'm very involved and concerned about those issues, but it's late in the day to put something in the actual budget because the budget train has basically left the station. So to start a new proposal, too late." This, Andrew, is nothing new. I think they're doing political calculations. I think the governor has found that even when he loses on a polling issue, he can outmaneuver this mayor when it comes to PR. And I think that's why he did this. I think he didn't have to do this. He did this because he could.
Well, I think that's certainly one way to look at it, that I can outflank de Blasio and I can make myself look like more of a centrist when I do, because everybody's calling centrist, or calling de Blasio this
and also the reason he took a shot, that he didn't have his act together, that he couldn't get his stuff on time, et cetera. It's proving to be ineffectual.
But you could also make the argument that Cuomo might sense a little bit of a threat to his own popularity here, because, well, de Blasio's pushing for homeless aid and I'm not going to be able to do that, so I'm just going to say that he didn't have the time or it's not getting in there. And so I think Cuomo is trying to protect himself, not just how he looks to the right and to centrists, but he's trying to protect himself from the left by making de Blasio look as bad as he can from time to time.
And it's also a soft spot for the governor because he came from HUD. His whole thing was housing here for the poor and disenfranchised. So the idea that the mayor's taking his issue, he's tender as it is, the governor.
That is definitely a strong way to look at this, considering Mr. Cuomo's background and how that pushed him into prominence. But another way of looking at this, Richard, if you really want this for the city of New York, why not just submit the paperwork on time? Yeah. Why not have the commissioner ask for a meeting on time and not just via a text message? If you know that the governor's folks are gunning for you, that's a way around this.
I'm just curious, where does that timing story come from? That's clearly somebody in the governor's office picking up the phone.
That's a good point.
And saying, hey, guess what? Guess what de Blasio did this time?
Well, that disagreement is very tame compared to what's going on in Harlem right now. And that's where Congressman Charlie Rangel and New York State Senator Espaillat, they're also appearing to be not only stepping into the ring for political infighting, but a lot of groups are picking sides too. Daily News, referring to the headbutting over Rangel's congressional seat as a schoolyard brawl. Rangel, he took shots at Espaillat's campaign financing. That's interesting. And also Espaillat called Rangel's campaign, quote unquote, desperate. Now, they're only magnifying a rift, though, not just between these two guys, but about a race between blacks and Latinos. And Dominic, obviously these two guys want the same job. And Rangel basically said, hey, this will be my last term. Basically, I want to run unopposed. And all sorts of folks, including the Reverend Al, said, I don't care. If all's fair here, we don't want to hear it from you. You pushed out Clayton Powell not that many decades ago. What goes around comes around. But this is about something more, isn't it? Isn't it about black and Latinos, which share kind of, a group in Albany here, a block, that are now fighting for who is basically in charge?
Well, keep in mind with this district in particular, it's been redone where Latinos have a much more sizable demographic. And so there are inherent tensions between these two communities because everybody wants the pie. Historically in New York City, and I've made this point numerous times, Latinos have stood besides African Americans in electing the city's first black mayor. Very sizable turnout among Latinos. But this is a race where Charlie Rangel is willing to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at Espaillat, and Espaillat is willing to do the same exact thing back at Rangel. So it's going to lead to a natural divide or tension
on
between
ethnic lines,
on ethnic lines.
And how could you blame either one of them? I mean, this was a race that was, I think, a 3-digit margin, maybe low 4-digit margins when it was contested 2 years ago. The first year under the redistricting that set up that district to include more of a Latino base in there. So these guys were evenly matched 2 years ago. You'd expect them to be throwing out everything but the kitchen sink.
And I would think, to Andrew's point, there's that, but there's also this historically is one of those seats that the 4 major black families have always held in Harlem here, the Kingmakers, right? And that the idea that Rangel will unceremoniously be pushed out within his own Democratic primary and it'll change hands, if you will, the party, that's got a lot of folks here among established political families and parties in Harlem more than a little tense, right?
You hit it exactly on the head. Rangel he's holding on for dear life, and he's willing to do anything, say anything, reach out to anyone. But again, growing Latino community within the district, and they want power that they feel is due to them.
And this may reach beyond just Harlem, right? This could go up to Albany, where they share a coalition, right? The Black and Latino coalition. But you know, there's been jockeying going back and forth here. It's not just the one happy, homogenous group. They're starting to fracture a little bit to say, we want leadership. No, we want leadership, and you got to work that out, right?
And what Latinos are saying are, hey, historically, you guys have had your chance. Now it's our turn. Support us. And so that's what's playing out in full public view. And you're right, this is not just a congressional seat. This is the seat from Harlem, if you will, New York, that also includes pockets of the Bronx. But this is a biggie, and Rangel wants to hold on.
Okay, when we come back here, once in a while you hear something and you say, he said what? Well, this next one fits that category. Former Defense Secretary puts himself on the front line. How Donald Rumsfeld is taking a primitive stance on U.S. foreign policy in Afghanistan. He has a lot of criticisms to say for a sitting president. That's right, this Donald Rumsfeld.